Welcome to episode 62 of Terese Talk. I'm your host, Terese Main. By day, I co-host a morning radio show on a network in New York and Pennsylvania. By night, I'm a podcaster. If you're a woman like me who just loves Jesus and wants to serve her family and her community a little bit better, you're in the right place. If you would, take a moment right now to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. My guest today is Renee Swope. She's just written a book called A Confident Mom. This book has 3 parts. It starts with your heart and then what your child needs most. Like your child needs to know the Bible is more than a story. Your child needs to know they're worth listening to. Your child needs to be disciplined in love. The 3rd section is what your heart needs to know, that God is doing more than you can see, that what you do doesn't define you, that God loves you and wants to be with you. And this book has been a labor of love now that Renee has kind of gotten on the backside of parenting.
This is the book that I've wanted to write since the very beginning of starting ministry 20 something years ago. But God told me to put it on, I sensed the Lord telling me not yet. And I mean, it's such a better book because I waited, because now my kids are 27 and 24 and 13. So my life experiences are so much more. So, and then the concepts are very similar, like the truths, the biblical truths, but the stories and application of them are, I love the book. I'm sorry. I've never loved anything I wrote. And I love this book so much. I mean, I am a doubter. I'm a self-doubter. I'm always have criticism for something I've written. So this is so unusual for me, but it just has so much potential to encourage moms. So
I have a 21-year-old and a 20-year-old, and now I'm like, man, I wish I could go back. I would do it so much. My kids would be they're awesome now, but my parenting would be so much more awesome. I would never lose my temper. I would turn every difficulty into a teachable Jesus moment.
Absolutely.
Why does God wait to give us the wisdom that we need to do it right? And what are we supposed to do with it?
My favorite chapters, really the most powerful lessons, came out of the times that I blew it. Like, one of the chapters is about how I wanted to punish my child so bad that he would never, ever bite again. Like, I was going to take out, everything. Like, I don't even know if I mentioned everything because I probably would have gotten in trouble, but I wanted to ground him for a month and take away all his toys. But God used the story of the prodigal son, as I'm walking through the motions of it. And then there's another one where I yell at my kid and we're in the middle of learning about kind words, and he completely calls me out and says, "Mom, how do you expect us to learn how to use kind words when you don't even use them with us?" Those are my favorite stories. So, because I feel like that's how I grew, was what God did in me. I think, for me, this book is so much about what God does in us. Do you feel like that?
For sure.
Your journey spiritually, and that's probably if we had kids or not, we're just growing in our relationship with ourselves and other people. And so that's one of the things I love about the book too, because I know that's where moms are. And I just want to give them hope.
And this idea of confidence, which is such an interesting name, an interesting word to put in the title of your book, because it sort of makes you realize as a mom that, wait, I'm not the only one who's not doing this confidently.
Right.
Wait, other people don't believe that they have it together. Why do we lack so much confidence when we know that God made us for this? He took it upon himself to, whether it's biologically to, allow us to grow a child inside our bodies or to nurture them in a way that a mother can, only a mother can, but somehow we are like, oh, I'm definitely not doing this right. Why is there such a lack of confidence?
I think it's because there is so much complexity to it. I can't think of anything in life that is more weighty than preparing another well, first off, they start off as a little person, so dependent on us, but they're emotional, they're physical, they're mental, they're spiritual. There's so much complexity to all the parts of their life. And it's so important. All of them are so important. And we're not prepared. We can't take a class, an online course. Sure, there's courses, but nothing can cover all of it. And then as soon as you kind of figure out the stage you're in, it changes. They change. There's so many stages of our children's development. And, for me, my sake, and a lot of other people, like some of us just weren't really mothered very much, or, didn't grow up in a home where we saw like what we think and the Lord would want us to do. Like I just grew up in a non-Christian home with a single mom who wasn't home a lot. And so I didn't experience a lot of that. So I didn't really know what to pass on or how to do it. And I also feel like we think I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough spiritually. I'm not doing enough emotionally. I'm not spending enough time. There's always a not enough there. And I think the biggest problem is if we did enough, would we know it? Because we've never defined it.
There's a lot there. And then if you do enough, is it too much? Because then your kids never grow to the point where they can fill in the gaps, which they eventually have to do. I mean, the goal is to make like capable adults, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's
hopefully more than capable, just like
right.
really like nice people
who love Jesus. It's not too much to ask.
Love Jesus and love other people.
Right.
And they're responsible and honest and have integrity and kindness. There's just a lot.
You're putting a lot on the list.
Yeah, you just hope. I mean, I hope they're good humans that people, are blessed to be around. That's part of my one of the things I talk about too is, we look at like academic achievement and athletic ability and all these things we want our kids to accomplish. But when we focus in on character, like every child, no matter what their abilities are, every child can reach their fullest potential if we'll focus on their character, on their heart. And I talk about that, like heart-centered parenting, character-focused parenting. And but yeah, for any mom that's listening, like none of us think that we're doing enough. All of us struggle with mom guilt. I haven't met a mom who doesn't. I don't know if dads do, but I just know moms do. And that the way I became a confident mom was just I sensed the Lord saying, I'm not looking for success or failure. I just want your faithfulness. I just want you to do the best you can with what you have, even if that means cooking frozen pizza or apologizing for yelling at your child today. That is faithfulness. Apologize and ask for forgiveness. And when I could lay my head on the pillow and say, you know what, I blew it, but I did the best with what I could. And I went and I apologized and asked forgiveness. And I modeled for my child what that looks like. Then that was good. I'm going to call it a good day. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I thought it was interesting that you brought up seasons and how, you kind of master a season and then the next season comes, these stages of parenting. One of the pieces of advice that I give moms who I meet is don't buy into the lie that you're missing something because a stage is over. I think the enemy always loves to say to us, oh, what you're in now is not as good as what you were in, and it's not as good as what's coming in the future. Then when you get to the future, he tells you, oh, that season you just left, that was the best.
Cherished it more.
Right. Yeah. And we end up living with all of this regret, and that there's something in every season. Middle school, there's something in that season that is sweet, and you miss it if you're too busy looking at what you don't have. And there seems to be this concept of contentment, and that is, the enemy loves to work in our discontent, because it comes across that, God has not given you what is best. Where you are in this phase with your kids is not the best. The job that you're doing is not the best. Your house is not the best. It's this constant state of discontentment. And really that contentment comes from just a close relationship with Christ. I mean, we have to get filled there first. So how do we balance that? Like, okay, what I'm feeling right now, is there something that I need to change, or do I just need more Jesus? Do I need to work on that relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think it's crucial. I mean, I think you have named a really important topic, which is discontentment. Versus contentment, because I do think, and that's what I struggle with. That's what I look back on my parenting, that season of parenting when my boys who came first were like, 3, 4, 5 through. Oh, I wish I could remember when I kind of realized, okay, there's a strategy going on here. And, if you think about it, like that's exactly what he did to Eve. God's not giving you enough. Oh,
Right.
he's holding out on you.
Mhm.
And then he talks her into not trusting God. And then she's like, regrets, right? Oh, if I only had cherished what
Right.
I had there. This isn't as good as I thought it would be. So it's such a scheme. But so good job calling him out. And he wants us to miss out on what we're in the middle of. Every place that we're in the middle of, he just wants us to miss out, because if we live in the fullness and fully present and savoring that moment, as hard and as beautiful as it can be, then we're going to live in our fullness. We're going to be, when we show up fully as who we are, the best of who we are in Christ in us. I think our kids see Jesus in us, versus if we're discontent. I know for me, in those seasons of discontent, I was always focused on everything except my kids. Like, oh, if I just had like a new couch, or if I could just like spend time with my friends, or if they just acted this way, or, instead of just savoring and being present in that moment.
It's funny because we'll all quote, count it all joy when you face trials but we look at the trials and we're like, oh, a trial is this, but nobody ever says like count it all joy when you have a colicky baby, or no one says count it all joy when your middle schooler says a word that you can't even comprehend that they know, or when, your college student is deeply defiant. Like no one says count it all joy in this, but there is joy in those moments. It's just hard to find. How do we find that joy?
Well, I think that the trial is, there's no joy in the trial, but we have to look for little, what I call pockets of joy, or joy deposits all around it. Like, I think, and not just focus in on the trial. See, so I think we get consumed by just that trial, and that's all we can see. And let me just give you an example. When my son was 15, he told us he had decided he was an atheist, which, as you can imagine, the bottom fell out in my husband and my heart. It felt like it fell out. Now, we didn't freak out in front of him, which I'm so grateful the Lord helped us not to do that. But we did freak out later on, alone in our closet together. So, but anyway, through this journey with him, he said some things that completely made me have a panic attack inside, because I was like, oh my gosh, I hope you're not saying things like that at your Christian school. But I felt like the Lord was like, don't criticize what he's saying, but praise him for his honesty. So instead of saying, Andrew, blah, 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 like,
you can't think that way, or you can't this, or
you can't think that way, or you can't talk about God that way, or you can't, and saying, like, I just said, I really appreciate your honesty. Like, thank you for being so honest. And so I think if we can, I have an analogy in the book that I share about mining for gold. And it's, I think joy comes when we look for those little specks of gold in the midst of all the dirt. Because when a gold miner, is looking for gold, they have to move through tons of dirt to find one speck or 1 ounce of gold, but they don't look for dirt. They look for gold. And the more they look for, the more they find. And so I think the trial, the defiant child, the difficult middle schooler, the colicky baby, that's the dirt, that's the hard stuff. And I think, and God knows it, and it's okay for us to say, this is awful. But then to look in that baby's eyes, or to look at their little nose and think about the miracle of them being formed. And just to look at that middle schooler and remember, what they look like, or before, or just create a funny moment, just do something fun together and count that joy.
Right.
Count that joy.
It's interesting. You bring up an issue with what you went through with Andrew, that I think we all feel like our kids are a reflection of us, but we kind of give ourselves too much credit, because if like God is sovereign enough to cover mediocre parenting, like you and I both grew up in a single mom working home, and somehow we turned out okay, and we work in ministry. So like God obviously can redeem, I remember asking my mom what we were when I was a kid. What are we? I saw these kids going to religious ed. Like I so was craving God. And she said, oh, we're atheists. I remember that conversation. And I thought, you just are born into what you are. This is what you are. And just grew up thinking that. And somehow God redeemed that, because he's bigger than that. But still, with this situation you went through with Andrew, and it's like, don't say those things at your school, because somehow that's a reflection of us. Like we forget that they're God's and he's got it.
And it's exactly what I was challenged with, because I live in Charlotte. I was on staff with Proverbs 31 Ministries, which was like 5 minutes from his big Christian school,
Right.
where I knew everybody and they knew me. And so when he first told us, I knew I have a choice. I can try to protect my reputation and what people might think about me or my son, or I can be vulnerable and honest about this. And if people don't give us grace, then that's not who we need to be around. I need to find leaders in ministry and Christians who are going to love my son and be a reflection of Jesus. So I had to make a choice. And very early on in that journey, I decided we're not hiding this as long as he's okay. I won't share anymore, but and he couldn't care less. And I just thought, I hope that by us being transparent and honest about this, it will help other parents who are walking through the same thing. And I had to make a decision, like, I can't take this on as my responsibility. My husband really struggled with feeling like a failure as a father and feeling like, what have I done wrong? He's an incredible dad. It's just, Andrew was there's so many factors that led to his decision. I think the most important thing, though, because I don't want to leave parents hanging, it got dark. It was really, really hard. We had no idea what was going to happen. And there's addiction in my family. So I was afraid, Andrew was going to just lose all sense of moral wisdom. But what the Lord told us to do was not to talk about scriptures and push the Bible on them, or take away YouTube, or, push church. There even came a point where he didn't want to go to church, and we didn't make him, but we did church at home, in a way that would be comfortable for him. So, but what God showed us was, be who you say that I am. Be patient. Be with them. You tell them I want to be with them. Be with them. Like, turn off your phone. Be with them, and just get out of my way. And the Lord, Andrew pursued, learning more about atheism, and a year and a half later. And there was a lot to the journey, but a year and a half later, he told us, I'm just tired of living without hope. And so I want to give God a chance. So I'm going to open my heart just a little. And I don't want to go to church, and I don't want to hear sermons, and I just want to read my Bible and see. If God is real, I want to know him personally, and I want to see his face. And so he began on his own to pursue that. And what God did was miraculous. He ended up giving his life to Christ and going to school and studying ministry to become a youth pastor.
I think a lot of times kids who are raised in Christian homes feel like they don't have a big testimony story. It's like, oh, I was raised in a Christian home. I accepted Jesus when I was in kindergarten, Sunday school, and this is my life, And I think as Christian parents, sometimes we forget that our children's salvation is their relationship with God. It is not their relationship with us. And as much as we can try to pave the way, we really need to clear the way and just let them have that, because the worst thing I think that can happen is that we die and our kids go, I didn't really know God at all. I was just kind of riding my parents' coattails of faith.
Right. Yeah. And he told me, he said, all those songs that you sang to us as little kids kept coming back. And I was so mad that Jesus loves me. This I know. Right. And Jesus loves, they just kept coming back. And yet I know God used them, Mom. So tell other moms, to sing those songs and say those prayers, because God did use them. And he said, but I needed to find my own faith and my own relationship with God, so that when I left home, I could talk to him, I could lean on him, and I could, need him.
Right.
And so I was, at first I kind of panicked, and then I was like, I'm so glad this is happening while he is at home, not when he's in college.
Right.
So I encourage parents, be a safe place. Don't panic. Don't criticize their thoughts and their questions. Actually be a safe place and say, that's a good question. I don't have that answer. I really respect you asking questions. They need to hear our language of adulthood, because they're becoming adults and they're trying to prove to us they're not children anymore. And they're not.
Right.
And it's hard. It's very hard. But I think our kids, especially growing up in Christian homes, I think we need to be the safest place our homes need to be the safest place to ask hard questions.
It's funny. I just read that the kids say the coolest moms are the moms who are willing to talk about anything. And
that's awesome. I'm a cool mom.
I mean, that it can just be whatever it is, like just have that conversation. And so there is something to that. I want to talk just a little bit about being honest in our struggles. You went through that. We've seen Lisa Turkhurst go through that repeatedly. And obviously there are lines where we don't like cathartically pour every detail of every struggle that we've gone through. But there is something to not just saying, oh, I'm good, everything is good, because that isolation that we go into kind of on our own, like we do that to ourselves. It's like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm not going to call anybody. I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to talk to anything about it. And it just reminds me of like how a wolf comes in to tackle a herd of sheep. He doesn't go for the whole herd. He tries to get one off onto the side, isolated, and then just goes for the kill. And so we kind of help the enemy by going, oh, I'm just going to be over here by myself. And that's not how we're meant to be. So how can we be honest without being a burden? And how can we respond well when another mom comes to us and shares like an actual real struggle, not about like my laundry bled, but like something really big that's going on? What was helpful for you?
For me is just to be listened to, just like instead of wanting to fix or instead of thinking about what we're going to say next, is just to be present with her, try to put ourselves in her shoes and imagine without any judgment, because all of us could be there, wherever that person is. I could be where Lisa is right now. Any of us could be, or she could be where I was. Like, it's just like none of us have anything like, a corner on the market of anything. So I think just not being judgmental, being present, listening, and maybe not giving answers or advice, but saying like, how can I love you best where you are right now? How can I love you best here in this moment? And when we walk away from that moment, maybe leaving or not leaving, but sending a little note, like a handwritten note that she could keep on her dresser, not just a text, but something she could see, or checking in on her too, maybe putting on a calendar, check back with. Because I think it's easier to walk away too and just get really busy with life. And if she's poured her heart out, that's really hard because she's now been really vulnerable and she has no idea what you've done with that information or if you even remember. I think it's really important to build friendships that before trials come, where we learn who we can trust. Like, I don't think we have 15 people that we can like tell everything to. Like, I have 2 or 3 who I can like tell everything, the ugliest, hardest stuff. And I don't so when I share Andrew's story, I don't share all the details, but I'll share some that still honor him and of the details that he's okay with me sharing, because I've asked him more than once, the details that are going to be helpful to another parent or to another teenager. Does that make sense? I want to share information that's going to help others, not just be bleeding on people. And, and I think it's okay to be a burden to people, but not everybody. I think we also need to be comfortable being, it's okay for me to be a burden to my best friend. God says, bear one another's burdens, but I don't want to be a burden to 20 people who don't know me, or 50,000 who read an email I wrote on Proverbs 31 devotion yesterday.
Renee Swope's latest book is called A Confident Mom. You can find it anywhere you buy books. If you've enjoyed this episode of Terese Talk, be sure to subscribe and look for the next episode on Tuesday morning. If you really loved it, consider making a gift to Family Life, the ministry this podcast is a part of. Just go to familylife.org and find out more about what we do. Did you know Family Life offers a variety of podcasts from news to kids to faith? You'll find a favorite on demand at familylife.org/podcast.